The Nexus Arena had seen many foolish challenges over the centuries, but this was beyond stupidity. It transcended into the realm of pure, unadulterated madness. Kethvar stood in the center of the crystalline combat pit, his forearms stretched wide, each one ending in razor-sharp talons that could slice through reinforced steel like it was wet paper. His exoskeleton gleamed under the arena lights, battle-scarred but unbroken after 347 consecutive victories. Not one opponent had ever landed a single blow on the Zenthari champion. Not one. The crowd of 70,000 aliens from across the galaxy roared their approval, their various forms of applause creating a symphony of clicks, hisses, and harmonic vibrations that shook the very foundations of the arena. Some spectators hung from the ceiling with their tentacles, others floated in specialized viewing pods, but all eyes were fixed on the legend himself. And then she walked in, the human. A collective gasp rippled through the arena, followed by what could only be described as the intergalactic equivalent of confused laughter. She was tiny by Zenthari standards, barely reaching Kethvar's mid-torso, with only 2 arms and no visible natural weapons. Her skin was soft, pink, and utterly defenseless looking. No exoskeleton, no venom glands, no energy projection capabilities. "Is this some kind of joke?" wheezed Thakmor, the arena's announcer, his 3 heads turning to look at each other in bewilderment. "Did someone accidentally send us a diplomatic escort instead of a fighter?" The human female rolled her shoulders, cracked her knuckles with small popping sounds, and stepped forward with the kind of casual confidence that made absolutely no sense given the circumstances. She wore simple black clothing and strange white shoes that squeaked against the arena floor. Kethvar tilted his massive head, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his species. In 3 centuries of combat, he had faced the deadliest warriors from 100 different worlds. Plasma-wielding Vorthan berserkers, shape-shifting morphic assassins, energy-draining void wraiths. Each one had fallen within minutes. This human looked like she belonged in a nursery, not a combat arena. Little creature, Kethvar's voice boomed across the arena through his translator, dripping with condescending amusement. "Are you absolutely certain you understand what you have signed up for? This is not a diplomatic meeting. This is combat to submission or death." The human smiled, and something about that expression made the temperature in the arena drop by several degrees. "Oh, I understand perfectly," she replied, bouncing lightly on her toes. "The question is, do you?" The crowd erupted in laughter, but underneath it all, a few of the more perceptive aliens felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries while watching Kethvar fight: uncertainty. Her name was Maya Torres, and 3 months ago she had been sitting in a comfortable diplomatic office on Proxima Station, reviewing trade agreements and trying not to fall asleep during another thrilling session about mineral extraction rights. Former mixed martial arts champion turned interstellar diplomat, because apparently the universe had a twisted sense of humor when it came to career transitions. The whole mess had started when Ambassador Velkun, a particularly pompous Zenthari official with delusions of intellectual superiority, had made the mistake of bragging about their invincible champion during what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner party. Maya had been there as part of the human diplomatic corps, nodding politely while alien dignitaries compared the size of their respective military achievements. No species in the known galaxy has ever produced a warrior capable of even touching our great Kethvar, Velkun had declared, his mandibles clicking with smug satisfaction. Your humans, in particular, are laughably weak. Soft flesh, fragile bones, no natural weapons. Evolution clearly favored you for nothing more than clerical work. The other aliens had found this absolutely hilarious. Maya had found it absolutely infuriating. Now, Maya had spent 5 years in the diplomatic corps, specifically learning how to bite her tongue, smile politely, and navigate interspecies relations without causing intergalactic incidents. She had attended seminars on cultural sensitivity, taken courses in alien psychology, and mastered the art of turning the other cheek when faced with casual xenophobia. But apparently there was still enough of the old Maya left inside her to respond to Velkun's smirk with, "Wanna bet?" What followed was a blur of escalating bravado, alcohol-influenced decision-making, and the kind of diplomatic nightmare that would normally require a formal apology from 3 different governments. But Vel'Ko'n, drunk on his own arrogance and something that smelled like fermented algae, had taken the bait completely. "Very well, human," he had sneered. "If your pathetic species truly believes it can challenge Zenthari's superiority, then let your finest warrior face our champion in honorable combat. When they are inevitably destroyed, perhaps your people will finally understand their proper place in the galactic hierarchy." The other diplomats had tried to intervene, but the challenge had been made in front of representatives from 17 different species. In Zenthari culture, backing down from such a challenge would be considered a sign of species-wide cowardice. The political ramifications would have been catastrophic for human relations across the galaxy. So here Maya stood, 3 months later, having volunteered for what was essentially diplomatic suicide because nobody else wanted to be responsible for humanity's reputation being ground into space dust. The funny thing was, looking at Kethvar's supremely confident posture and the way the alien crowd was already celebrating his inevitable victory, Maya realized that somewhere between signing the combat waiver and stepping into this arena, she had stopped caring about diplomacy entirely. She was looking forward to wiping that smug expression off every Zenthari face in the building. The political implications of this spectacle were staggering, and every alien diplomat in the VIP section knew it. Human-Zenthari relations had been teetering on the edge of a trade war for months, with the Zenthari Empire consistently treating humanity like unwelcome newcomers at an exclusive club. They controlled 3 of the major hyperspace lanes, held monopolies on rare mineral extraction, and never missed an opportunity to remind other species that they had been conquering star systems while humans were still figuring out fire. Ambassador Klein sat in the diplomatic box, sweating through his formal robes, despite the arena's climate control. Next to him, Vel'Ko'n lounged in his specialized seating pod, practically radiating satisfaction. The Zenthari had turned this into a propaganda event, broadcasting the fight across 17 star systems as proof of their species' inherent superiority. "Your champion seems remarkably calm for someone about to die," Vel'Ko'n observed, his translator adding an extra layer of smugness to his already insufferable tone. Down in the preparation area, Maya was indeed calm, but not for the reasons any of the aliens suspected. She sat cross-legged on a simple bench, eyes closed, breathing steadily while chaos erupted around her. Arena technicians scurried about, adjusting force field generators and checking medical equipment. The smart money was apparently on how quickly she would be killed, not whether she would lose. Meanwhile, Kethvar held court in the champion's preparation chamber, surrounded by combat analysts and species historians who had spent the morning recounting his greatest victories. The morphic assassin who had lasted 4 minutes before being torn literally in half. The Vorthan berserker whose plasma weapons had proven utterly useless against Zenthari combat reflexes. The void wraith who had drained energy from 3 previous opponents, only to discover that Kethvar's life force was too powerful to absorb. "Remember the crystalline warrior from Sigma Draconis?" wheezed one elderly Zenthari historian. "Artist exoskeleton in known space, weapons that could cut through starship hulls, and you shattered him in 17 seconds. Kethvar flexed all 4 arms simultaneously, his razor-sharp talons gleaming under the preparation chamber's lights. That creature, at least, had natural weapons. This human appears to have brought nothing but optimism and what I assume passes for athletic wear among her species." The crowd outside was growing restless with anticipation. 70,000 aliens had paid premium prices to witness what was being advertised as the most one-sided combat in arena history. Betting pools had been established across the galaxy, with odds running at roughly 50,000 to 1 against the human lasting more than 30 seconds. In the VIP section, military attaches from a dozen different species leaned forward in their seats. This wasn't just entertainment, it was intelligence gathering. Everyone wanted to see exactly how pathetic human combat capabilities really were, and whether the upstart species posed any actual threat to established galactic power structures. But Maya Torres continued to sit quietly, her breathing steady, her expression serene. Occasionally she would roll her shoulders or stretch her neck, movements that looked almost casual to alien observers, but were actually precise warm-up routines developed over years of professional combat training. The arena's announcement system crackled to life, Thakmore's three heads speaking in harmony, ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all classifications. The moment you have been waiting for has arrived. Prepare to witness the continuation of an unbroken legacy. As our champion faces another challenger destined for the historical archives of failed ambition. Maya opened her eyes, smiled that same unsettling smile, and stood up. "Showtime," she murmured to herself, cracking her knuckles one final time. The arena floor had been cleared, the force fields activated, and 70,000 aliens held their collective breath as Maya Torres walked onto the combat platform. She moved with an easy, relaxed gait that made absolutely no sense to anyone watching. This was either supreme confidence or complete delusion, and the smart money was definitely on delusion. Kethvar entered from the opposite side, and the crowd erupted in thunderous approval. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his forearms spread wide in the traditional Zenthari combat stance, talons extended, exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. Each step he took made the arena floor vibrate slightly, a reminder that he weighed roughly 4 times as much as his human opponent. Citizens of the galaxy. Thakmore's voice boomed across the arena. Witness the 348th challenge to our undefeated champion. Will this human join the ranks of those who learned, too late, the price of Zenthari supremacy? Maya walked to the center of the combat circle, stopping about 3 meters away from Kethvar. She looked up at him, tilted her head slightly, and said, "You know, you're even uglier up close." The translator rendered this insult in 17 different languages simultaneously, causing a wave of shocked gasps from the alien audience. Insulting a Zenthari champion before combat was considered either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Most observers were leaning toward the latter. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your species' tendency toward inappropriate humor in the face of certain death is curious. I will make your end swift, little creature. It is the least I can do for such entertaining bravado. How generous of you, Maya replied, settling into what looked like a casual fighting stance to alien eyes, but was actually a perfectly balanced position that could transition into attack or defense in milliseconds. Just one question before we start. Speak. Speak. When you fall down, try not to crush any of the spectators in the front row. I'd hate for your funeral to be a double booking. The crowd laughed, but it was the nervous laughter of beings who weren't quite sure if they were witnessing comedy or madness. In the VIP section, Ambassador Klein buried his face in his hands. The combat signal sounded, and Kethvar made his first mistake. Instead of launching immediately into his devastating opening combination, he decided to toy with his prey. He took 2 leisurely steps forward, all 4 arms raised in a display of overwhelming superiority, expecting the human to either flee in panic or freeze in terror. Maya Torres did neither. She moved. The first strike hit Kethvar in what humans would call the solar plexus, but what Zenthari anatomy classified as the central nerve cluster. It was a perfectly placed punch, delivered with the kind of precision that comes from years of studying exactly how to disable opponents efficiently. The impact sent a shock wave through his entire nervous system. He was still processing the fact that something had actually made contact with his body when the second strike landed on the side of his neck, targeting a pressure point that no alien species should have known existed. The third strike came as an elbow to his lower left arm joint, precisely placed to temporarily paralyze the limb. The fourth was an uppercut that would have shattered a human jaw, but simply served to snap Kethvar's head back and scramble his equilibrium sensors. The fifth strike was a knee to his midsection that folded him slightly forward, gasping for air. All 5 impacts had occurred in less than 2 seconds. The arena fell into absolute, stunned silence. Kethvar staggered backward, shaking his massive head, trying to process what had just happened. In 3 centuries of combat, no opponent had ever landed a single blow on him. This tiny human had landed 5 before he had even realized the fight had begun. Impossible, he breathed, his voice carrying clearly in the shocked quiet of the arena. Maya stepped back into her fighting stance, barely breathing hard. That's what everyone keeps saying. Maybe you should start considering the possibility that your information is outdated. For the first time in his long career, Kethvar looked at his opponent, really looked, and saw something that made his blood run cold. Those strikes hadn't been lucky shots or desperate flailing. They had been surgical, precise, delivered by someone who understood combat on a level that transcended brute strength or natural weapons. This human was a professional. You actually know how to fight," he said, and there was something approaching respect in his voice. Maya smiled that unsettling smile again. "Honey, I haven't even gotten started yet." What happened next defied every combat algorithm in the Zenthari Empire's extensive military database. Kethvar, finally taking his opponent seriously, launched into his signature attack pattern, and a devastating 4-armed combination that had ended fights against opponents twice Maya's size. His movements were lightning fast, precise, and backed by 3 centuries of undefeated experience. Maya responded by doing something that made absolutely no sense to anyone watching. She dropped to the ground, rolled between his legs, and punched him in the back of the knee. Not a pressure point, not a nerve cluster, just the back of his knee. It was crude, ungraceful, and completely effective. "What was that?" gasped Velkun from the VIP section, his smugness evaporating like morning mist. "Street fighting," Ambassador Klein muttered, recognizing the technique. "She's mixing formal martial arts with bar-room brawling tactics." Kethvar spun around, swiping with all 4 arms in a move that should have caught Maya no matter where she tried to dodge. Instead, she bent backward in a way that seemed to violate basic spine anatomy, the talons whistling harmlessly over her chest, then snapped forward with an elbow strike that caught him in the ribs. The crowd was beginning to make noise again, but it wasn't the confident roaring from before. It was the confused murmur of beings trying to process something that shouldn't be possible. "Her fighting style has no pattern," one of the Zenthari combat analysts shouted to his colleagues. "How are we supposed to predict movements that follow no logical combat doctrine?" That was exactly the point. Maya had spent 5 years in mixed martial arts, learning discipline, technique, and proper form. She had also spent her teenage years getting into fights behind her high school, where the only rule was that there were no rules. The combination was proving problematic for alien expectations. Kethvar adapted quickly, credit where credit was due. He began treating this like a serious fight instead of an exhibition, using his reach advantage and superior strength to force Maya to stay on the defensive. His 4-armed assault was relentless, each strike capable of breaking bones if it connected. But Maya moved like water, flowing around his attacks with an unpredictability that made the Zenthari champion's tactical mind work overtime. Just when he thought he had figured out her defensive pattern, she would do something completely different. Duck when she should dodge, jump when she should duck, or simply stand her ground and block a strike that should have sent her flying across the arena. "This is impossible," Kethvar growled between attacks. "Your species doesn't have the bone density to absorb that kind of impact." "Yeah, well," Maya replied, deflecting another strike and countering with a kick to his shin that made him stumble. "My species also wasn't supposed to figure out space travel. It had developed faster than light communication, or survive long enough to have this conversation. We're kind of known for doing impossible things." The truth was, Maya was getting hurt. Every block sent shockwaves through her arms, every impact jarred her bones, and she could feel bruises forming where his strikes had grazed her. But pain was temporary, and losing to this arrogant alien in front of 70,000 spectators was forever. So when Kethvar caught her with a backhanded strike that sent her skidding across the arena floor, she did what any sensible human would do in that situation. She got back up, spit out a little blood, and smiled. "Okay," she said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Now I'm warmed up? The crowd was on its feet now, all 70,000 aliens straining to see what was happening. This wasn't going according to script. The human should have been unconscious by now, or at least showing signs of the terror and desperation that characterized most of Kethvar's opponents. Instead, she was looking more confident with each passing minute. Kethvar charged forward, putting his full weight behind a four-armed strike that should have ended the fight immediately. Maya waited until the last possible second, then dropped flat on her back, caught two of his arms, and used his own momentum to throw him over her head in a move that was part judo, part gymnastics, and part pure stubbornness. The sound of 3 meters and 400 kilograms of Zenthari champion hitting the arena floor was like thunder. The crowd erupted. For the first time in 3 centuries, someone had put Kethvar on his back. Alien spectators were on their feet, shouting in languages that had no words for what they were witnessing. In the VIP section, military attaches were frantically taking notes, trying to understand the tactical implications of what they were seeing. Kethvar rolled to his feet with impressive speed, but something had changed in his expression. The casual superiority was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like excitement. "You are full of surprises, little human," he said, and this time there was definite respect in his voice. "I have not been forced to use my full capabilities in decades." Maya cracked her neck, the sound audible even over the roaring crowd. "Good thing, because I'm just getting started. You ready to see what humans do when we stop being polite?" The Zenthari champion's mandibles clicked in what might have been anticipation. "Show me." For the first time in his career, Kethvar was actually looking forward to finding out what his opponent would do next. But what followed was the most brutal 60 seconds in Nexus Arena history. Kethvar unleashed everything he had learned in 3 centuries of combat. His forearms moved in perfect coordination, creating a whirlwind of strikes that would have overwhelmed any opponent in the galaxy. His talons carved through the air with lethal precision, his movements flowing like a deadly dance that had been perfected through countless victories. Maya met his assault with something the Zenthari had never encountered before: pure, unfiltered human spite. She took hits that should have dropped her, absorbed impacts that should have shattered her bones, and kept coming forward with the kind of relentless determination that evolution had bred into her species over millions of years of refusing to lie down and die. When Kethvar's superior reach advantage seemed insurmountable, Maya closed the distance by allowing herself to be grabbed, then used close-quarters combat techniques that turned his own strength against him. When his four-armed combinations became too fast to counter, she started targeting his joints with small, precise strikes that gradually slowed his attacks. And when all else failed, she did something that no Zenthari combat manual had ever bothered to address. She bit him, right on the wrist, like some feral animal defending its territory. The crowd gasped in shock. Kethvar jerked his arm back in surprise, and in that split second of confusion, Maya wrapped her legs around his remaining 3 arms, twisted her body with every ounce of core strength she possessed, and sent the Zenthari champion crashing to the arena floor for the second time in the fight. This time she landed on top of him. "Yield?" she panted, her forearm pressed against his throat in a chokehold that was cutting off his air supply. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the arena was silent. 70,000 aliens held their breath as they watched the impossible unfold before their eyes. Kethvar could have broken free. His species was stronger, his exoskeleton was harder, and his combat experience was vast. But as he looked up into Maya Torres' determined face, he realized something that would reshape his understanding of warfare forever. This human would rather die than surrender. And more importantly, she would find a way to take him with her. "I yield," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence of the arena. The explosion of noise that followed was unlike anything the Nexus Arena had ever experienced. While aliens from across the galaxy leaped to their feet, roaring approval in languages that had no common words but shared the same sentiment, they had just witnessed history. In the VIP section, Velkun sat in stunned silence, his earlier smugness replaced by something approaching terror. The political implications were staggering. If humans could defeat the Zenthari Empire's greatest champion, what did that say about their military capabilities, their potential as allies or enemies? Ambassador Klein was already calculating how this victory would reshape every trade negotiation, every territorial dispute, and every diplomatic relationship in the known galaxy. Maya rolled off Kethvar and helped him to his feet, extending her hand in the universal gesture of sportsmanship. The Zenthari champion looked at her small, soft palm, then clasped it with one of his massive hands. "You fight with honor, Maya Torres," he said, and his voice carried genuine respect. "Your species is formidable." "Thanks," Maya replied, grinning despite the pain radiating through her entire body. "You're not too bad yourself for an oversized bug." 6 months later, the Treaty of Nexus Station was signed in the same arena where Maya Torres had changed the course of galactic history. The document established humanity as a full partner in the Galactic Council, with trade rights, territorial protections, and military cooperation agreements that would have been unthinkable before that fateful fight. Ambassador Vel Kun, his attitude dramatically adjusted by reality, found himself working closely with human diplomats on a regular basis. The phrase laughably weak had been permanently removed from his vocabulary. Maya herself had become something of a legend across 17 star systems. Holographic recordings of her fight with Kethvar were studied in military academies, analyzed by xenobiologists, and replayed in sports bars from here to the Andromeda Galaxy. She had returned to her diplomatic duties, but with a new title, Special Combat Liaison. Because apparently the universe had decided that sometimes the best diplomacy came at the end of a fist. Kethvar had become an unlikely ally, serving as cultural ambassador between the Zenthari Empire and human colonies. Their friendship, built on mutual respect earned through violence, had become the foundation for a new era of interspecies cooperation. But perhaps the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity. The small, soft, apparently defenseless bipeds were no longer dismissed as harmless newcomers. They were recognized as what they had always been, survivors who refused to stay down, problem solvers who thrived on impossible odds, and warriors who fought with weapons far more dangerous than claws or armor. They fought with heart. As Maya stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching ships from a dozen different worlds dock peacefully in the same space, she smiled that same unsettling smile that had made an arena full of aliens nervous. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. After all, they had said no one had ever landed a blow on him. She had landed 5 before he realized the fight had started.